Hi everyone, this is Mike Shaw. I'm the instructor for the Star Trails and Night Photography course at the Brian Peterson School of Photography. And what I'm here to show you today are two of the secret weapons of night photography post-processing in Photoshop and Lightroom. As you can see here in this time-lapse video taken in a super dark sky location out in New Mexico, you can really see the Milky Way as it's sliding across the horizon in the sequence of images. And one of the questions that I get all the time is, Mike, how do I get my images to look like this? How do I get the Milky Way really to pop out of the background? And that's what you're going to learn here today. So let's just go ahead over to Photoshop, and here I've got one of the images that went into this time-lapse sequence, and this one is straight off the camera. What you can see here is the image. It is an image that was made with a Nikon D800E camera, DSLR. The settings were an ISO setting of 6400, an aperture of f2.8, which is as wide open as my 14 to 24 millimeter lens would go, f2.8, and a shutter speed of 20 seconds. And as you can see, the Milky Way comes out nicely. It's very visible. You can see the main band of it along with a bunch of other stars and other constellations. You can see the moon setting over the horizon here. But let's just see if we can amp this up a bit. So the way that we're going to do this, I'm actually going to do this by turning the background into a layer and then creating a second layer, a duplicate layer, so we can easily toggle back and forth in between the two images. So the base layer, the bottom layer is layer 0. That's our original image. And then the top layer is the one that we're going to work our magic on. So to work our magic, we're going to go over to the filter menu and pull down the camera raw filter choice as I'm showing you here. Just as a heads up, the top camera raw filter simply applies the filter from the last time that you use the camera raw filter. So just be sure you don't choose that unless you want to reproduce the earlier effects. But in any case, let's choose the camera raw filter, doing that here. And what this brings up is a familiar window. You've probably seen this before, especially if you use with a raw files. This is the original Adobe Camera Raw Filter, the ACR filter, which is used to convert raw files into Photoshop workable files. And so the two secret weapons, one of them is right just here. It's this clarity slider right here on top. And the other one is buried in the FX menu. If you look over here where it says FX, click on that FX symbol, and then right at the top is the dehaze slider. So those are the two secret weapons right that's there. Let's see how they work. So starting with the dehaze menu, or dehaze slider, let's go ahead and pull that all the way to the right, all the way to the left, all the way to the right. And you can really see what this is doing to the clarity and the contrast of the Milky Way relative to the background stars. So you can suit this to your taste. There's no hard and fast guideline here. This is entirely what's suitable to you, and that to me is part of the joy of photography. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and, it depends also on each individual spot, to be honest. I'm going to bring this up to, let's say, right around here, which turns out to be around 25, 27, 30 on the dehaze menu. Okay, let's go back to the basic menu. And we're going to come back down to the clarity slider, third from the bottom. Same thing, all the way over to the right, all the way over to the left, all the way over to the right, all the way over to the left. And I kind of like the way the Milky Way looks right about, let's just say here. And that turns out to be a clarity of plus 56. Okay, so those are our two secret weapons that we're going to use. Let's just go back and take a look at the before and after. It's easily done now. So here's the original image straight off the camera. And here's the image with those adjustments made. And I think you'll agree that if we look at the sky, there's a huge improvement on the visibility of the Milky Way. One might even think that it might be a tad overdone. Just as an aside, if we decide that we, in this case, wanted to get rid of the graininess in the foreground, we can easily apply a mask down here. I'm going to click the mask tool, take my brush, and simply brush over using a fairly large brush the regions of the foreground that we'd like to get rid of, using an opacity of like around, let's bring it down to around 50% and a flow of around 50%. And we can just brush over these regions in the top layer, and that just brings in the unnoisy parts of the underlying layer. So to see that effect, I'm going to switch off the bottom layer, and you can see the hole, and it wasn't very obvious, was it? You can see the hole in the top layer that I produced with my brush, and I can go ahead and continue to remove that in this format. And in doing so, again, I'm just keeping the enhanced part of the top image, and I can overlay that on the unenhanced part of the bottom image. Okay, well, that's certainly one way to do this, but let's see if there's another way. I'm going to delete that now. Let's go back to our original image. And just as a second approach, let me just show you go back to the camera raw filter. So I'm showing you here. I'm going to pick this, and this time, instead of applying those adjustments globally to the whole image as I did before, I'm going to choose this radial filter tool. I'm just going to apply my adjustments to just really to the sky. And in fact, I can adjust this so I can just make the adjustments to a fairly small region of just the Milky Way in this case. So I can rotate it around like you see here. I can change the dimensions of the region that I want to adjust and do all kinds of things with it. And then within this region, I can make sure the effect is on the inside. And then I can just adjust my clarity and dehaze just within this region. So I'm going to increase the clarity here. Look what's happening to the Milky Way. It's improving. The dehaze, same thing. And then I'm going to bring in my third secret weapon, which is this whites tool. I'm going to bring this up. My fourth one, which is the exposure. And all of a sudden, if I click OK, you can see I've done a very local adjustment just on the Milky Way. So I don't really have a before and after to show you that. I could show you the history, I suppose. Let's see if we can do that. So here's the original image, and here's the one with the camera raw filter applied. So original, and then the camera raw filter. The last thing I'd like to show you, especially in this local adjustment mode of night photography, is to go back to the camera raw filter submenu, and now I'm going to pick the radial filter again, and in this case I'm going to select simply the foreground. Don't worry about what we're doing just here. It's applying the previous set of settings. So I'm going to bring the clarity and the dehaze down, and the shadows and so forth. And what I'm going to do now, the exposure, is simply increase the shadows adjustment a bit like so. And I might also increase the noise reduction just a smidge. And in this case, I think you'll be able to see that the before and after is pretty significant. So here's the image with the Milky Way enhanced, but the foreground as it was, and then this is the same image, but with the foreground enhanced. So you can see the before and after effect. And this just gives you some ideas of some of the ways you can take this image and turn it into this image. So I hope that helps. This is your Nightscape professor saying, get out there tonight and shoot your night skies. Take care.